Since Gene Hackman, his wife, and one of their dogs were all found dead at their Santa Fe home, and the simplest potential explanation of carbon monoxide poisoning seems to be less and less likely.
Have you ever heard a story so unsettling it made you question everything you thought you knew about someone you admired? Picture this, a Hollywood legend, beloved for iconic roles over multiple decades, suddenly discovered lifeless alongside his wife under circumstances so eerie that even seasoned investigators are scratching their heads. This isn't just a run-of-the-mill headline. This is about Gene Hackman, an actor who rose to fame through intense, critically acclaimed performances, only to end his days in a quiet New Mexico home.
Did you paint when you were in the Marines?
I drew a lot.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Why'd you give up racing?
I think racing gave me up, actually. I couldn't put a season together.
When Gene and his wife, Betsy Arakawa, stopped returning calls, people assumed they were simply enjoying another private retreat. But the truth was far more disturbing. From day one, the discovery of their bodies raised more questions than answers, leaving everyone from local authorities to longtime fans utterly baffled. Was it some rare health event? Something in the environment? Or perhaps a hidden story so tangled we won't fully grasp it until official reports come out? If you think this is just another tragic celebrity death, keep watching. Each clue we uncover unravels a deeper layer of mystery.
But I always drew, and I had a bit of talent for it, and it was. But I didn't feel that I could keep with it the rest of my life.
One that makes even those who knew them best question what really happened. Section 1. The shocking discovery. Nobody expected any grim news from Gene Hackman's property in Santa Fe, New Mexico. He was 95 years old, but friends say he remained active, doing yoga, woodworking, even dabbling in new projects. Betsy, 64, was his constant companion, a classical pianist who radiated calm and supported Gene as he navigated aging and a private life away from Hollywood's glare. Then came a day when neither one answered the phone or responded to the usual check-ins. Worried staff and close friends decided to drop by the couple's home. What they found was devastating. Gene and Betsy, both unresponsive. Not a single sign of forced entry. No broken glass, and nothing that outwardly screamed foul play. Initially, some whispered that maybe they had quietly passed away in each other's arms, like a tender, if heartbreaking, final moment.
Authorities investigating the deaths of actor Gene Hackman and his wife Betsy Arakawa mistakenly identified their deceased dog. A pet care specialist confirmed that their Kelpie mix Zena passed away, not their German Shepherd Bear as originally reported.
But that was only the start. Something wasn't lining up with the timeline. Something unsettling enough that the authorities, upon their very first walkthrough, classified their deaths as suspicious. You might expect officials to label it natural causes, given Gene's advanced age. But the moment they realized Betsy likely died days before her husband, the standard narrative went out the window. And so, the story leaps from sad but straightforward to something undeniably bizarre. How could Betsy have been gone for a while if Gene was still there? If this was a simple case of simultaneous health crises, wouldn't the coroner's timing appear more consistent? Right away, the Santa Fe County Sheriff's Office announced a deeper probe. Investigators refused to jump to conclusions, leaving the door open to every possibility. From lethal environmental factors to intangible emotional triggers, we can only guess. Section 2. The conflicting timelines. Why does the timeline matter so much? Because in unexpected deaths, especially for an older couple, the difference in the order and timing can shed light on whether something or someone else was involved.
Before the film started, Pacino and I were up in San Francisco, and we thought maybe we'd try to get into the characters, you know, the bums. And we got some clothes and stuff and walked around Market Street.
Did Gene pass shortly after losing his wife, unable to cope with the shock? Or did an external factor, like a toxin or a carbon monoxide leak, claim them in staggered fashion? We can't forget the swirling theory of carbon monoxide poisoning, an invisible threat that sometimes creeps into older homes. While many point to that as a potential culprit, especially after Betsy's body showed indicators of having been deceased for longer, there's no confirmed proof yet. The family's voice, especially from Jean's daughter Leslie, adds an extra layer of confusion. Leslie insists her father was in remarkable shape, that he was the kind of guy who would mention any home repairs or issues needing attention. Could something so dangerously silent have slipped beneath even his vigilant eye? Investigators remain tight-lipped about specifics. They're analyzing every detail, from the air quality in the house to substances found on site, to figure out if something in the environment is responsible. But as soon as news hit that the timeline for each death didn't match perfectly, 1,000 theories flooded social media. Some speculated about a hidden rift or dramatic conflict. Others wondered if perhaps Betsy had quietly struggled with a health condition that worsened, leaving Jean in shock. The truth for the moment remains elusive. Section 3. Statements from family and close friends. Despite the public's hunger for clarity, the Hackman family has offered only glimpses of their private heartbreak. Leslie, Jean's daughter from his first marriage, surprised people by emphasizing how active her father still was for his age. She described him as a near obsessive when it came to daily fitness, claiming he did everything from Pilates to yoga stretches. That alone seems at odds with the idea of him suddenly collapsing in the days following Betsy's suspected passing. She also called attention to her father's sharp mind, implying that if something bad were happening in their home, like a gas leak, Jean probably would have noticed.
And after a couple of days of that, we'd get in the cab and we'd go back to the, the
Sure.
Mark Hopkins. Or whatever.
Yeah, sure. It's easy to be a bum that way when you have a suite reserved at the Mark Hopkins.
The confusion only grows when you factor in the statements from actor Dennis Quaid, a longtime friend. Quaid says he spoke to Jean just 3 days before the tragedy, describing him as totally fine and excited about a new woodworking project. One can't help but feel the heartbreak in Leslie's words. She firmly believed her father's vitality would give him a few more good years. To her, the notion that he passed away in such a tragic and inexplicable way feels like a piece of a larger puzzle. She's urged the public not to jump to any conclusions, insisting that none of the plausible explanations, from heartbreak-induced passing to environmental hazards, fully resonate with the father she last spoke to. She also paints a portrait of Betsy as a loving partner who made sure Jean was happy, healthy, and well cared for. If Betsy went first, Leslie can't fathom how her father didn't sound any alarms. Section 4. Rumors, controversies, and speculations. When an acclaimed actor dies in unexpected fashion, rumors and controversies inevitably swirl. It's as if the public, hungry for answers, will latch onto anything that hints at a hidden drama. Suddenly, old stories about Hackman's interactions on set, times he clashed with directors or co-stars, resurface. People start revisiting rumors of hidden feuds or accusations surfaced from decades ago, all to see if there's any faint thread connecting them to the present mystery. Carbon monoxide is only one theory. Another rumor suggests Jean might have had an undetected health condition, something that triggered a sudden crisis when Betsy fell unconscious. Speculation about Betsy's own health also rages on. Some have whispered about a quiet battle with depression, though that remains pure conjecture with zero verifiable evidence. Online, you'll find every possible scenario.
This is actually our third book, our third book of fiction. Dan has written a couple of books, nonfiction.
Some go so far as to wonder if a caretaker neglected them, while others propose that a freak accident took place. The swirling talk isn't just about their final days either. Some point to Hollywood controversies from decades back, like run-ins with the press or heated arguments on set. Could these be relevant now? Realistically, probably not. But in the vacuum of official answers, every half-forgotten anecdote is getting dredged up, magnified, and linked to a tragedy that doesn't quite fit a normal pattern. You'll also see purely sensational claims, a shady business deal, or even talk of a cursed property. So far, none of these have any backing, but they demonstrate how quickly a real-life mystery can spiral into whispered conspiracies. If there's one truth at the heart of all these rumors, it's that nobody saw the end coming. Gene Hackman was the last person folks expected to see in the center of such a puzzling event. The swirl of speculation underscores how little is actually known, and that vacuum of facts is fueling a wave of hearsay. Section 5. A closer look at their private lives. Before all this heartbreak, Gene and Betsy led a life that many described as almost idyllic. Contrary to typical Hollywood extravagance, they opted for New Mexico's more subdued landscape. Betsy, once a classical pianist, found serenity in a slower pace, far from big city hustle. Gene, tired of showbiz demands, embraced quiet creativity in his later years, writing novels, painting, and woodworking. Locals in Santa Fe often saw him at coffee shops or local charity events. He wasn't one for big appearances, so the HACKMAN'S enjoyed relative anonymity and peace. They contributed generously to local arts and educational programs, forging a warm relationship with the community. Word has it that each year they'd sponsor scholarships for underprivileged students studying music, a testament to Betsy's passion and Gene's belief in giving back. Longtime neighbors recall their closeness, how rarely you'd see one without the other. That closeness is precisely why the idea that Betsy passed days before Gene and he somehow continued on without alerting anyone feels so surreal.
On diving, submerged
is one of them. Yeah.
submerged. The other part of your question was, how do we work? Painfully.
Looking back, there's scant evidence of drama or hidden turmoil. Betsy was widely praised for her level-headedness. Friends described her as the anchor that kept Gene, famously intense in his younger days, calm and stable. While no marriage is perfect, those who knew them best insist the HACKMAN'S were genuinely content. The suddenness of their deaths rips open a painful gap in the local community, where they had become fixtures of kindness and quiet generosity. But as investigators dig deeper, their private world is now under a microscope. Every routine gesture, like picking up groceries or attending fundraisers, will be revisited. Did they mention feeling unwell? Did they talk about a malfunctioning heater or a strange odor? All these everyday clues could take on new weight if an environmental hazard is proven. At the same time, the question of how exactly did their timeline unravel continues to echo, inviting theories that range from heartbreak to more insidious possibilities. Section 6. The ongoing investigation and forensic hurdles. When there's no sign of forced entry, no obvious trauma, and no immediate cause of death, investigators have to rely heavily on autopsy results and toxicology reports. That process, as many experts warn, can be complicated by the time it took to discover the bodies. There are unique challenges that come from delayed findings. Evidence can degrade, blood samples can become less conclusive, and environmental traces might dissipate. Sheriff Mar Rodriguez of Santa Fe County has promised a thorough, transparent process. He insists that they'll leave no stone unturned, acknowledging that the public is deeply invested because of Gene Hackman's high profile. The sheriff's office has interviewed neighbors, any local staff who frequented the property, and even the couple's medical providers. They're piecing together everything from prescription records to the exact layout of the house, checking if certain areas were poorly ventilated or if there was a known fault in the heating system.
It's great fun. I must say, it's like a license to steal. Almost anything you do is going to be okay because he's a kind of a flamboyant character and deranged and all the things that actors love to play.
At this point, authorities haven't ruled out accidental poisoning, natural deaths, or any other scenario. They're simply collecting facts. According to an inside source close to the investigation, the biggest challenge is determining precise times of death, given the advanced age of one victim and the uncertain timeline of the other. This calls for specialized forensic analysis, studying factors like body temperature, decomposition rates, and even the presence of specific insects. It's a grim process, and it could take weeks, even months, before we have a definitive medical conclusion. Publicly, Leslie has pleaded for patience. She says there's so much the family doesn't know, and she prefers to let professionals do their job rather than stoke rumor fires. But patience is often in short supply when a beloved Hollywood figure dies so strangely. Fans want answers, social media wants theories, and the media wants the next scoop. Yet the investigators remain clear. They won't be cornered into premature announcements. Just when we think we've seen the full picture, details trickle in that flip our assumptions. Every corner you turn in this story, a new question emerges. Perhaps something small but significant, like a neighbor spotting unusual activity, or an old friend recalling a health complaint. The final puzzle has yet to take shape, and everyone involved is holding on to the hope that forensics will clarify what truly happened behind those closed doors. In a world that glamorizes fame and fortune, Gene and Betsy's story serves as a stark reminder. No one, no matter how iconic, is immune to life's abrupt turns. At first glance, it might appear they passed away from natural causes. He, an older gentleman nearing a century of life, and she, his dedicated wife. But the tangled timeline, the baffling differences in how and when they may have died, and the lack of any obvious foul play raise questions that deserve thorough answers.
It's the best part in the movie, really.
I think
isn't
so,
it, Lex
yes.
Luthor?
I wouldn't play Superman for anything.
You don't envy Christopher getting into the cape and...
Well, he uses my body, of course.
Some believe an environmental hazard quietly claimed them. Others suspect a more complicated set of events, a silent health crisis, or an emotional spiral triggered by loss. Rumors about a caretaker, a potential overlooked leak, or even unreported family tensions swirl online. Yet none of these have been confirmed, and each possibility only adds to the mounting speculation. As fans and admirers, we're left in the painful uncertainty of not knowing how two people who seem to have it all, talent, resources, a loving relationship, could vanish so mysteriously. Investigations, autopsies, and interviews might eventually paint a clearer picture of their final day. Until that evidence emerges, any definitive conclusion remains out of reach. Despite the confusion, what is certain is the legacy Gene Hackman leaves behind. Over 5 decades, he electrified movie screens, redefining what it meant to portray deeply human characters, flawed, fierce, and unforgettable. He carried that tenacity into his personal life, finding solace in quieter passions and a devoted partner by his side. Even if we never fully unravel the puzzling timeline of their passing, we can celebrate the depth of his artistry and the genuine bond they shared. In the end, these twists and turns only remind us that real life isn't always as predictable or as neatly resolved as the movies. Whether the cause was a hidden hazard, a sudden double tragedy, or something else entirely, we may eventually get answers. But we can honor the couple by remembering that behind every famous figure is a private story, one that can be filled with unexpected heartbreak, resilience, and sometimes mysteries that refuse to be easily explained. Thank you for staying with us to explore this baffling chapter in Hollywood lore. If you respect Gene Hackman's legacy and want to see his life honored with thoughtful investigation rather than reckless rumors, share this story and keep an eye out for credible updates. Until then, let's hold on to the hope that the truth will surface, bringing the Hackman family and the public the closure they deserve. And above all, let's remember that beneath the spotlight, our greatest legends are still human, navigating fragile, unpredictable lives, just like the rest of us.